Hi, guys. Today we are going to read chapters 4 and 5 from The Littles and the Trash Tinies. And I think there's going to be some action today. Now, remember, I want you thinking about characters, main idea, and setting. Okay. That afternoon, Mr. Little, Tom, and Lucy hid behind a telephone pole. It was near the Big's garbage cans. Lucy held the leash of Uncle Nick's white mouse, Mus Mus. Mr. Little held a ladder made from 2 pencils and some matchsticks. The snow was still falling. If we get much more of the snow, Mr. Little said, we won't be able to get the truck when it comes. The garbage man usually parks right near this telephone pole, said Tom. All we have to do is put the ladder up against the running board of the truck. I sure hope it's long enough, Mr. Little said. He looked the ladder up and down. The running board of the truck has an extra small step down, said Tom. It'll work. Tom, you're always so sure of everything, Lucy said. And when it doesn't work, just then, a large blue and white garbage truck turned the nearby corner and headed their way. This is it, said Mr. Little. Good luck to all of us. They crouched behind the telephone pole. Lucy shivered. Don't be afraid, Lucy said Tom. I'm not afraid, Lucy said. I'm cold. The garbage truck came to a halt, exactly where Tom said it would. The motor kept on running. The door swung open and a man came down 2 steps to the street. He left the door open. The man quickly walked over to the Big's garbage cans. He began to carry them to the back of the truck. Now, whispered Mr. Little. He stepped from behind the telephone pole and propped the ladder against the small step beneath the running board. It fit perfectly. See, Tom said. He looked at Lucy. I told you. And there is the garbage truck. And this is what they got a ride to go to the town dump. The 3 tiny people and the mouse climbed the ladder quickly. Mr. Little and Tom pulled the ladder up behind them. They placed it against the next step and everyone climbed up to that one too. One more, said Mr. Little. He was breathing heavily. This time he placed the ladder against the truck's body near the open door. The tiny people scurried up the ladder and into the cab of the truck. Over here, cried Tom. Here's a place to hide when the driver won't see us. He pointed to under the seat. Mr. Little and Lucy followed Tom into the hiding place. In a few moments, the garbage truck went to work, grinding up the Big's garbage. It was being compressed into the back of the truck. The garbage man climbed into the cab. He shifted gears, and the truck went down the road. It was a long, bumpy trip. The garbage truck stopped at all the houses between the Big's house and the town dump. Stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. There was the steady noise of clatter of the machine that pressed the garbage into the back of the truck. Tom and Lucy huddled under the seat in the truck's cab. Whenever the door was open, icy cold air blew in on them. When the door closed, the truck's heater blasted hot air. Tom checked and rechecked his pack. He wondered if he had brought enough arrows for his bow. Lucy kept whispering to Mus Mus whenever the man was out of the truck. Mr. Little worried out loud. It's getting dark. We're going to get there when it's dark. Tom searched his memory. He was trying to think of all the things Uncle Nick had said about the dump. Finally, the smell of burning garbage. It was the dump. There were shouts of men working. The truck swung around and backed up. They were unloading the truck. Let's get out of here, said Mr. Little. He stood in the truck door. The ladder, Dad, said Tom. We'll need it to get back. They got the ladder from under the seat. Hurry, Lucy said. Mr. Little tossed the ladder into a snowbank. It disappeared beneath the snow. Jump, commanded Mr. Little. Jump near the ladder. Stay hidden in the snow until the truck leaves. Mr. Little and Tom jumped. Lucy got a good grip on the mouse's leash. She threw herself into space, pulling Mus Mus with her. They tumbled head over heels for 2 long feet. And there's the picture of them jumping out of the garbage truck. The fluffy white snow softened Lucy's landing. The tiny girl stuck her head out of the snowbank. She saw Tom's head. He was looking back at her a few feet away. Tom put his fingers to his lips. Shh, he said. Then he ducked back under the snow. After a while, the truck drove away. It was now 5:30, the end of the working day. The rest of the men left too. The Littles were alone in the town dump. "Well, well," Mr. Little said, as he dug himself out of the snow. "That wasn't any fun. Where is everybody?" The children popped out of the snow. "Here," said Tom. They brushed each other off. Mus shook himself, then he combed his whiskers with his front paws. "Let's see," said Mr. Little, thinking out loud. "It's dark, it's cold, I'm hungry, we don't have any idea where we are." Mus knows," Lucy said. "Well, anyhow," said Mr. Little, "I think we'll spend the night near here and look for the trash city first thing in the morning." He looked around. "I don't want to go prowling about in a strange place at night." "Where shall we make our camp?" asked Tom. Mr. Little led them over piles of trash. They came to one of the many small fires burning in the dump. "If we keep close to one of these fires," he said, "we can stay warm." "And the animals will stay away too," Lucy said. "They'll be afraid of fire." The Littles began preparing their campsite. They all carried plastic sandwich bags in their packs they had taken from Mrs. Big's kitchen. Mr. Little spread one of the plastic bags on the snow. He placed it near the fire. "This is our ground cloth," he said. There's as much cold under us as there is in the air, maybe more. It's important to have as much protection under us as it is to have on top of us." Mr. Little placed the second sandwich bag on top of the ground cloth. He got out their sleeping bags. It was made from one of Mr. Big's woolen socks, about 6 inches of sock, from the toe to the back of the heel. Mr. Little stuffed the sock into the second sandwich bag. Finally, he and Tom made a lean-to out of the last 2 sandwich bags and some twigs. So here's a picture of their little campsite. There's their little sleeping bag, and there's the ground cloth and the lean-to right there. "It's terrific," said Tom. Mr. Little stood back and looked at the campsite. "It may not be just like home," he said, "but it should keep us warm." "I'm awful hungry," Lucy said. "Me too," said Tom. "Camping out always makes me hungry." Mr. Little opened his pack and got up some provisions. He passed a raisin to each Tom and Lucy, and then he passed around some oyster crackers. Mr. Little carried water in a small red balloon. He tied it with a string and carried it over his shoulder. Everyone took a drink. After eating, the Littles sat next to the fire and talked. "I still don't understand why Uncle Nick thinks he's dying," said Lucy. "It's kind of hard to explain," Lucy said. "Older people think about these things more than younger people, probably." "I never think about dying," Tom said. "Uncle Nick is getting older, isn't he, Daddy?" Mr. Little shook his head. Lucy looked up at her father. "You won't die, will you, Daddy?" Mr. Little smiled. "Not one day soon," he said. "I hope not, anyway." "I don't think we should worry about it," Tom said. "I'm not awful worried about it," said Lucy. She moved closer to her father. Mr. Little put his arm around Lucy. "When we bring Uncle Nick's friends to see him," he said, "he'll probably feel better about everything." Chapter 5. Here's a little picture. "Daddy, wake up," Lucy whispered. "What?" Mr. Little rubbed his eyes. "There's a mean-looking yellow cat in the pile of junk over there." Mr. Little looked around in the early morning light. "Does it see us?" "I don't think so," whispered Lucy. Mr. Little poked Tom. "Wake up, Tom." Tom began to speak. His father put a hand over the boy's mouth. "Cat," he said. Tom's eyes widened. As silently as possible, the Littles climbed out of their sleeping bag. Without speaking, they went to work, taking down the lean-to. They folded the sandwich bags. Everything was put away. They picked up their packs and swung them over their shoulders. "I don't see that mean cat anymore," Lucy whispered. Uncle Nick's white mouse was pacing back and forth. He tugged at his leash. "Let Mus go," Lucy said, "Mr. Little. He'll lead us away from the cat." When the mouse was let go, he began to run. The Littles scrambled after him. They tried not to make any noise. Mus led the Littles deep into the dump. They climbed over piles of tin cans and broken bottles, past a smashed automobile, and went under a tall dresser with a broken mirror. And there's a picture. Suddenly, the mouse darted into the end of a pipe. The opening was about 4 inches across. The pipe stuck out of the trash at an angle. The 3 Littles jumped into the pipe after the white mouse. Snow had fallen into the pipe and drifted down the length of it. Over the last few days of the storm, the snow melted and froze into ice. The Littles slipped on the ice and fell down inside the pipe. They tried to get to their feet, They slipped and slid. Down, down, down they went, sliding deeper and deeper into the junk pile. Well, that is the end of chapter 5, guys. And there was a lot going on. I would say the characters were who? Yep, Mr. Little, Tom, Lucy, and Mus Mus. Main idea was that, yes, they got to the dump safely. And now chapter 5 is going to probably tell us more about where they're going. Okay, guys, talk to you soon. Bye.